I was in third standard when my teacher called my mother and complained that your daughter talks too much. She asks too many stupid questions and she disturbs my class. I still remember the shame and the confusion. I didn't mean to disrupt anything. I was just being me. Have you ever been scolded for being too much, too talkative, too sensitive, too curious? The thing is, we're all different. The problem is when we become very different. So if you look at the bell-shaped curve, it's called the normal curve for a reason. When you're way on either extreme, that's when the trouble starts. And when people don't know how to handle our difference, or if we're causing trouble for them, we're shamed, silenced, scolded. And sometimes it even comes from a well-meaning place. They just want to keep us safe. But what if that thing that they call a problem is not actually a problem? What if it's actually a potency, something that we can leverage as an extreme superpower in our careers? Now, in order to know that and to discover that, we first have to let go of the judgment. Because when you're scolded for something and we're shamed as children, we begin to hide that ability, that quality from everyone else. And in doing so, we then start hiding it from ourselves as well. So to drop the judgment, I like to think of Rumi, who said, out beyond the wrongdoing, the ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there's a field. I'll meet you there. We all need to meet ourselves in that field of non-judgment. And then we see power and potency for what it is. So a hurricane or a tsunami might cause a lot of disruption, but inherently it's not bad. It's just power and potency. And that can be leveraged. It can be leveraged if we can channel it. And that only comes as step 2. So as a kid, I was scolded for talking too much. Today, I talk all day as a professor. I was scolded for asking too many questions. Today, I conduct workshops on innovation mindset and teach other people how to ask out-of-the-box questions. I was scolded for being too outgoing, for being too chitty-chatty, talking to strangers, being friendly, smiling. I was even called a flirt before I even knew the meaning of a flirt. That's been some amount of shame to overcome and own as just my inherent friendly, outgoing personality. Let me tell you some more stories from my coaching clients, things that were labeled as problems. One girl was scolded, she was too silent. Actually, she's a great listener, makes a great coach. Another little boy was called too sensitive. Truly, he's an empath. And now he can read emotions and he diffuses conflicts. He's a mediator. Another girl was called bossy, overbearing. She's a natural leader. Yet another kid was called fidgety, restless, can't sit still. Today, he's an energetic facilitator, lighting up the rooms when he works with people. Yet another little boy was called a daydreamer. Your head is in the clouds all the time. Guess what? He's a designer, a visionary designer, dreaming up visions that nobody else can think of. And my favorite story of the little girl who is shamed for being a liar. She crafts beautiful narratives that hold people captive, and she is a storyteller. Now, these career transitions are all happy career transitions, but I'm also going to tell you, it's not an easy journey for everyone. For some people, it is, definitely. But for many, many others, it requires a lot of inner work. And it depends on how much inner work it will require, because we need to redefine success. We need to redefine what our mind has believed as success, because otherwise we might land up discovering those beautiful superpower wings and then only discover that we have nowhere to fly to, or at least nowhere that our mind thinks is successful. Let me tell you my story. I grew up in the township of Jamshedpur, where we had all these flats and a little playground in the center. If you stood in the balconies, you could see everyone. One morning I heard one auntie shouting out, "Congratulations, Vikas!" And all the aunties and uncles came and there was cheering and clapping. And I was like, I asked my mother, what happened? She said, he got IIT. In that moment, I knew I wanted that thing called IIT. I was 7 years old. I didn't know what it was. It could have a dress, a car, a horse. Who cares? I just wanted it so badly because everyone was celebrating it. So I made it my vision. I worked very hard and I got to IIT. And I was so happy I'd won the trophy till the bubble burst in the first semester itself. And I realized I wasn't interested in electronics engineering, which is where my rank had taken me. But I didn't leave IIT. And you might wonder why, even though I knew right then, because my brain was wedded to that definition of success. It had a very heavily entrenched definition of success, and I didn't want to be a failure. Why does our brain, so how does this happen? Eventually, I study the brain now. So let me take you through it. Our brain is actually an innocent programmable device. We call it conditioning. And anything that is repeated often enough, the brain picks up as a model, as a mental model. Neurons that fire together, wire together. Let's look at the other side. Something called conformity. As humans used to live in herds, in groups. The herd mentality, that's conformity. When we see people doing certain things around us, our brain starts thinking, this is true, this is the right thing. So there have been fascinating studies on conformity. My favorite are the Ash experiments done very early on in the 1960s. So a participant is invited into the room and he's asked, you're given a very simple task, like he's shown different lengths of line and asked, what is the right length? And people actually give an answer to the simple task. You know why? Because they're surrounded by other people who have been told intentionally to give the wrong answer. And when the psychologists analyze the reason for this, they realize that there are two kinds of conformity. One is called normative conformity, where actually we know what the right answer is, but we get the wrong answer because, hey, you know what? We don't want to upset anyone. We don't want to look weird. We don't want to look out of place. And then there's the other kind of conformity, which is called informational conformity. And this happens when our brain actually tells us that the right answer is the one that the people around us are saying. So what affected me was the latter, informational conformity, because in IIT then I was surrounded by everyone else who thought that's the definition of success. Now this gets even messier because we are conditioned to conform to keep us safe. And conformity, like it happened in my case, then comes back and reinforces the conditioning. Because for the brain, more data points means more true, more real. And this leads to what I call a neurosocial 22 situation. And it gets way more stickier than this when you bring in emotions. Fears. Fears like, I might fail. What will others think? I'm not good enough. I'll get left behind. What we now know from science is that fear actually increases the brain's tendency to conform. So this was the sticky situation of my brain and its definition of success. And eventually I've realized that's the case for many other people. But what happens from that point onwards? So I became a very bad engineer, really bad. And I felt like a failure. And I decided there was an escape route. So I applied for management. And I tried to up my self-esteem. I didn't want to be a failure. I wanted to be a success. So my brain innocently picked the next shiny thing that people around me were associating with success. IIM. And I did my MBA in IIM Ahmedabad. And then I went on to work. I worked with Bank, ICICI, Infosys. I wasn't happy in my work. I didn't really enjoy it. I changed jobs because I didn't enjoy it. But then I also kept going for the big brands, the big labels, the big names. Because I felt so inadequate and I felt like a failure, I thought that if I associate myself with companies and institutions and brands which are believed as success, then somehow that makes me a success as well. Then I might have fooled people around me, but inside I couldn't fool myself. I was miserable. I used to cry in bathrooms. Where did I go from there? Luckily, that superpower of asking too many questions, that one kicked in. And I stopped only asking questions like, why is this happening to me, or why can't I fit in? And I also started asking questions like, how can I be happy at work? How can I find meaning at work? Do I need to work? What is the relationship between human beings and work? And these were the questions that took me on the next chapter of my life. It became an exploration. So I went on to study psychology, neuroscience, social science. I did a PhD in OB, organizational behavior. I studied Buddhism. I studied 3 religions, actually. I looked at yogic philosophy. Anywhere, I attended so many inner work retreats, anything that I had time and money to attend, anything, anywhere on the planet. If people were talking about the relationship between human beings and work, happiness at work, meaning at work, whatever it is, I was there, I was studying, I was learning. And then eventually I started understanding enough that helped me start crafting my own career. And I moved on to teach career crafting at IIM Bangalore. I also was teaching leadership. And I started looking very in human beings and their work. I was at IIM Bangalore for 10 years as a full-time faculty, developed my own body of work that was gravitating more and more towards inner work, less towards traditional management. But if you notice, I still had that, oh my God, I need to associate myself with someone or something that's successful in order to feel successful. That's why I am Bangalore. But eventually, the quest, the purpose, the inquiry that took center stage. And I moved out from IIM Bangalore and I started out on my own. I got trained as a coach and I started teaching other people to craft their own careers. I use what is now called, I developed an inside-out approach. I don't want you to get overwhelmed by, these are the groupings or pillars of the different areas that I've discovered working with clients and students over 20 years, that we need to look at all these aspects of inner work. The list, showing you this list of 10 and redefining success is just one. So it's not to overwhelm you, but to let you know that it's an ongoing journey, but it can be a fun journey and a very meaningful journey. And I also want to let you know that inner work doesn't happen alone. You have to combine it with outer work. So when inner work is redefining things inside our head, building resilience, creating emotional intelligence, understanding ourselves, mastering ourselves, there's also outer work of thinking, of prototyping, of experimenting, of learning, right? So this journey now can happen at any age. So whether you're a teenager or whether you're post-retired, looking at crafting your second innings, it's never too late to start crafting a career. At its essence, it's just about finding your rhythm, finding your roles, crafting that so that you can start yourself and feeling like yourself when you are working. Girl talk too much and ask too many questions. She's now making a living out of teaching, talking. She also got recognized by the education minister for being an innovator in higher education. And she helps other people craft their careers from the inside out because she knows the pain that it takes to be working in a job where you can't You are the one who has to show up for work every day. Those trophies that we get, they are one time to show other people, and then they're gone. But every day, every Monday, every Tuesday, it's you and your work. So your work needs to inspire you. Craft your career to include you. You're the one living your life. Your differences, and the combination of your unique differences, they are not flaws. They are your fingerprint. Don't fix it. Use it. Be creative in finding ways to use it. And finally, those things where you were so outside the bell curve that the world made you wrong, that you got pulled up, scolded, isolated, you were made to feel and look weird. Those things might just point you to your superpowers, your unique set of abilities, which in your career you can leverage as your USP. Because, if you were still within a bell curve, moderate strength, a moderate deviation, you wouldn't have got scolded. You wouldn't have got shamed. The very reason it was problematic was because it's such an extreme, like that tsunami or that hurricane. So if you can understand what that raw potency is and find ways to train that and use that as your advantage, those unlock your superpowers. And then there's nothing stopping you crafting the career and therefore the life that truly feels like it's made for you and you're made for it. Thank you.